these are a couple of brands. And by the way, I should have said it at the beginning, but I forgot to say that I don't have any affiliations with any food companies or, you know, any of the pictures that you see in my presentation here. I just find things that I know are good, like it's a reputable product, and it represents the message of what I'm trying to portray to you. But I don't have any affiliation with them, so there's no compensation at all for me putting these on here. But like if you go into the store, you know, I would want you to know what to look for. But here's my thing, you know, you see the raw sugar. We also have coconut sugar, which is, coconut sugar is a very similar to the raw sugar cane, the raw sugar from sugar cane. It sort of goes through a similar type of evaporation. If you take there's little flowers that grow on the coconut trees. So the sugar itself doesn't come from the coconut, it comes from the flowers. There's the little white flowers that grow on the coconut tree. They're called coconut blossoms, and they have a sap. So if you get enough of them, you can squeeze the sap out, and the sap is kind of watery. So they do a low heat evaporation on it to evaporate some of that water off. And so if you evaporate just some of the water, then you get something called coconut nectar, coconut syrup. So it's kind of it's a thicker type of nectar, and you can use it as a liquid. It's similar to using honey or maple syrup in your recipes. And then if they want to evaporate it all the way, like of all the water off of it, then they get what is known as coconut sugar, which is basically, as you can see, it's very granular, just like this is, which means that it retains a lot of its nutrients. Coconut sugar also has a lot of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. It even has amino acids, which are building blocks for proteins. So coconut sugar is also another one of those good alternatives to white sugar. And then this down here, it's called turbinado, which is a partially refined sugar, as you can see. All right, so here's just a few other things, some healthy sugar alternatives. So this is a brand called Coconut Secret, and they were actually probably one of the first companies to do a coconut nectar and a coconut sugar, which they call coconut crystals. One of the things we know about both raw sugar and coconut sugar is they're both low glycemic, the glycemic index is a measure of how fast those sugars are going to impact your blood sugar levels. And so like regular white sugar has a glycemic index number of 64. And this is on a scale of like 0 to 100, or, you know, some foods even go above 100 if they're really high glycemic. But white sugar has a glycemic index of 64, and raw sugar and coconut sugar have a glycemic index of about 35. So they're about half of the impact on your blood sugar levels. And that's why I say they're not completely, you know, safe. So these are not, the idea is not to replace all white sugar, and, you know, if you have an excessive amount of sugar in your diet, to just replace it all with this. The idea is to reduce how much you consume, and then when you consume it, you would consume one that has a lot of nutrition in it. This does not taste like coconut. Like I said, it comes from the flower. So it actually kind of, to me, tastes kind of like butterscotch. It's got that kind of caramelly, butterscotchy kind of flavor to it. It works really well in like quick breads, like banana bread, or I make cookies with it sometimes. It's you can actually pour some of this on pancakes, like instead of regular syrup, you could use that as your syrup for pancakes. That they're showing that in the picture there. I have tried that and it works. It's really quite tasty. We also have some other types of sugar alternatives. These are two that are pretty well known now. I remember back in the sort of was like maybe the mid 90s when I was first introduced to stevia, which is an herb. Stevia is an herb. This is stevia up here. Stevia has compounds in the leaves called glycosides, and it has about 9 different glycosides that when they get on your tongue, they have a ability to stimulate the sweet taste receptor on the tongue. And so they have a sweet taste, but they don't have any, like they're not a sugar. They're like it's an herb compound. So the glycoside doesn't break down in our digestive system, so it doesn't produce any glucose. And but it has a sweet taste. So people like to use it as a sweetener because it has 0 calories. And it's extremely sweet. It has like 200 times sweeter than sugar for the same amount. So usually people are only using small quantities of it. I use it in my coffee or tea, just a few drops. I usually buy it in a liquid extract because that's that's probably the closest to natural, other than just getting some of the plant and using the leaf itself, which you could do. But if you want to use it more uniformly as an adding it into a recipe, you would want an extract of it. It does come in a dry form. Like sometimes the way they do it is it's very similar to making tea. You take the stevia leaves and you steep them in cold water. You don't use hot water. They steep it in cold water, and then, just like any other kind of tea, what you're doing is you're literally extracting, or basically transferring, the compounds inside the leaves into the water. And so that's how they make a liquid extract of stevia. And sometimes they'll use some alcohol. Some brands use an alcohol. I tend to not go for those brands. I like the ones that just use water. But then you have just the liquid of it. And then if you want to, it's kind of similar to evaporating sugarcane juice. If you want more of a powder form, you evaporate all the water off after you've extracted the compounds from the leaves. And then you have a dry powder that usually what they do is before they evaporate the water, they pour it through a filter that will filter the chlorophyll, which is the green color in the leaves. They'll filter that out. They'll use a filter paper that has a small enough pores in the filter paper for all the sweet compounds to come through with the water, but not small enough for the chlorophyll to come through. So now you have a clear liquid, and then evaporate that off, and now you're going to have kind of like a whitish colored powder. And then because it's so extremely sweet, you can't just, you would, if you just use that, you would only need like a little teeny tiny amount of it, which is not practical for a manufacturer to put in a packet. So they usually add like a bulking agent. They usually use something called inulin, which is inulin is like a fiber that is a powdery, and it's really good for your digestive tract. It's good for your good gut bacteria. So they usually bulk it up with that so that you can have enough of it in a packet to add to your coffee or tea. But that's basically what it is. And now we also have another similar type of a compound. It's called monk fruit. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of monk fruit by now. It's kind of all the rage, is what I would say. Monk fruit is this fruit down here. It comes from China, and it's called monk fruit because the fruit was eaten by the monks when they would fast. Like they'd only do this when they were up in there, doing their meditation and things. And so that would be all they would eat. And that was kind of how it got its name, monk fruit. But its real name is luhanguo. And it too has glycosides in it. It's a fruit, but it has these glycosides similar to the ones that are in stevia. And so no calories, but extremely sweet. And so a similar type thing, they do an extract on it and then they can get it out. You can actually buy a pure extract of it in a bottle like this, just like you can get with stevia. But most people these days are buying monk fruit as a powder that is blended with another sweetener called erythritol. And I